The world of sport bikes has always been about extremes. Machines that push the limits of what's possible, of what's controllable, of what's even rational. And just when many believed the golden age of internal combustion was slowly fading, Yamaha came roaring back with something unexpected, something dangerously beautiful. The Yamaha R9 wasn't just another number in the R series. It was a statement, a rebellion wrapped in steel, carbon fiber, and adrenaline. The moment Yamaha unveiled the R9, the motorcycle world collectively held its breath. Its design alone spoke volumes, a perfect marriage of aggression and elegance. The dual LED eyes up front glowed like the stare of a predator. Every curve of the fairing looked sculpted by the wind itself. And yet, there was something raw about it, something mechanical that defied the sterile perfection of modern electric machines. It was as if Yamaha had taken the soul of the R6, the power of the R1, and the accessibility of the R7, then mixed them all in one vessel built purely to seduce speed itself. Underneath that sculpted body sat the heart of a beast, a newly developed 890 cubic centimeters cross-plane triple engine, tuned not just for power, but for emotion. It didn't growl like a traditional inline-4, nor did it hum like a twin. It howled with a rhythm that felt alive. Every twist of the throttle sent a pulse straight through the rider's chest. And that was the point. Yamaha didn't build the R9 to dominate spec sheets. They built it to feel. The first journalists to test the prototype came back shaken. "It's insane," one of them said. "It doesn't just respond to your touch, it reads your intentions." The R9 seemed to anticipate every movement, every breath, every flick of the wrist. The engineers had achieved what once seemed impossible. A bike that was both savage and civilized. It was fast, dangerously fast, but that wasn't what defined it. What truly defined the R9 was the connection it forged with the rider. The sensation that you weren't just riding it, but becoming one with it. Sepang Circuit, Malaysia. The afternoon heat rippled across the asphalt, shimmering like molten metal. On the starting line, a row of superbikes prepared for testing, but only one machine drew every gaze, the Yamaha R9, glowing in its iconic deep blue, the Blue Spirit. The engine throbbed softly, irregularly, like the heartbeat of a predator waiting to strike. When the lights went out, the silence was broken by an explosion of sound. The R9 launched forward, its front wheel barely grazing the ground as it devoured the straight. The first corner came fast. The rider crouched low, hugging the tank, body angled perfectly as the R9 carved through the turn. The bike didn't just follow commands, it anticipated them. It felt alive, a wild animal trained just enough to obey, but still capable of tearing loose at any second. At 100 kilometers per hour, 150, 200, the wind became a wall, yet the R9 sliced through it with surgical precision. The aerodynamic bodywork, once admired for its aesthetics, now revealed its true purpose, downforce, stability, and that uncanny balance between chaos and control. The sound of the cross-plane triple was hypnotic, building from a low rumble into a high-pitched wail that sent chills down the spine. By 10,000 revolutions per minute, it wasn't just noise anymore, it was music. The rider felt it in every bone, every heartbeat. At 240 kilometers per hour, the world turned into a blur. The R9 didn't tremble, didn't fight, it glided. Every millimeter of throttle input was translated into movement so precise it felt supernatural. And when the rider finally pulled into the pit lane, smoke curling gently from the titanium exhaust, he took off his helmet and whispered the only words that made sense. Outside the circuit, debates erupted. Some praised Yamaha for resurrecting the spirit of raw sport riding. Others accused them of betraying the R6 legacy by going too modern, too electronic. Purists claimed the R9 was too polite, a sport bike tamed by its systems. Yamaha's response was cold and confident. "We didn't build the R9 for the past. We built it for the future." And indeed, the R9 wasn't meant to be a nostalgia piece. It was meant to redefine what a middleweight superbike could be, a perfect middle ground between the violence of the R1 and the agility of the R7. But beyond numbers and comparisons, the R9 offered something few modern bikes could: honesty. It didn't hide behind electronic trickery. It gave you the tools to go fast, but it demanded skill, respect, and trust. It was a machine that rewarded courage and punished arrogance. In a world where motorcycles were becoming more like computers, the R9 reminded everyone that imperfection was beautiful, that a bit of danger was necessary for something to feel real. When Yamaha finally revealed the R9 to the world at the Tokyo Motor Show, it was more than a launch, it was a spectacle. The stage was wrapped in mist, illuminated by soft blue lights. The screen behind flashed the words, "Born to Dominate." Then, through the fog, a silhouette emerged, lean, sharp, alive. The headlights flared like eyes waking from slumber. The sound that followed wasn't a roar. It was a pulse, deep, rhythmic, human. And in that moment, everyone watching knew this wasn't just another motorcycle. This was a declaration. But not everyone was ready to accept it. Critics called it a repackaged R7, a marketing stunt, a nostalgia trap, and yet those who rode it came back speechless. One journalist wrote, "It's not evolution, it's revolution." Behind the R9's creation was a philosophy not of perfection but of emotion. Yamaha's engineers, most of them under 35, were told one thing: build a motorcycle that makes the rider smile after switching it off. That single sentence shaped the soul of the R9. Every click, every vibration, every shift was engineered to make you feel. The team didn't chase lap times, they chased goosebumps. But with emotion came controversy. Environmental boards in Europe criticized Yamaha for clinging to combustion when the world was moving electric. Yamaha is fueling a dangerous nostalgia. One headline read, "The CEO of Yamaha replied calmly in an interview, 'We're not rejecting the future. We're simply refusing to forget the past. Human emotion can't be recharged.'" That line became legendary. The hashtag #FeelTheR9 spread across the internet, with riders everywhere sharing their first reactions. Laughter, screams, sometimes even tears. One veteran racer, Marco Il Lupo D'Angelo, summed it up perfectly after his test ride. "I've been riding for 30 years, but the R9 made me feel like a kid again." Yet, as always, the R9's wild nature had consequences. Within weeks of its release, minor crash reports began to surface. Not due to design flaws, but overconfidence. The R9 wasn't a forgiving bike. It demanded respect. Yamaha released an official statement. "The R9 is not for beginners." But the warning only added to its mystique. Soon, TikTok was filled with clips of riders pushing their limits, some glorious, some disastrous. The media asked, "Has Yamaha built a machine too powerful for the streets?" Yamaha stayed silent. Legends aren't explained, they're proven. Clubs began to form around the world. The Ninth Brotherhood. From Tokyo to Los Angeles to Jakarta, the roar of our 9S filled the night, echoing through empty highways. In a world moving towards silence, the R9's voice became the anthem of rebellion. Then came the short film, R9, The Sound of Freedom. 5 riders from 5 countries, each telling the same story, that this machine reminded them of who they were. "You don't ride the R9 to escape the world," the film concluded. "You ride it to remember who you are." That single line captured everything. The R9 wasn't about speed, it was about identity. Even in Yamaha's homeland, Japan, the R9 moved people in unexpected ways. A retired engineer, one of the men who helped design the original R1, watched an R9 pass by and quietly wept. "I helped build the first R1, he said softly. "When I heard the R9, I knew the spirit isn't dead." And it wasn't as night fell over the city. A lone rider glided through wet streets. Reflections danced across the fairing as the R9's low growl echoed off the walls. He wasn't racing. He wasn't running. He was simply riding. For him, and for thousands like him, the R9 represented more than machinery, it represented resistance. In a world obsessed with silence and safety, the R9 screamed defiance. People say the age of engines is ending, but Yamaha proved that as long as there are humans who crave the sound of combustion, the smell of fuel, and the rush of fear mixed with joy, that age will never truly die. Because the R9 isn't a product. It's a feeling. It's the moment your pulse syncs with the revs. The second your fear turns into fascination. The breath you take when you realize you're not just surviving the ride, you're living it. Months after its release, a video went viral. A young rider, alone in the mountains, filmed himself cruising slowly through mist and pine trees. At the end, he stopped by a cliff, turned off the engine, and said quietly, "I don't know why, but this bike makes me feel free. Not because I'm fast, but because I feel in control of my life again." That clip reached millions. In the comments, one line kept repeating, "That's why I fell in love with motorcycles." Behind the scenes, Yamaha admitted something remarkable. The R9 wasn't born from a marketing plan, but from passion. A small team of young engineers had worked on it secretly after hours, building the bike they dreamed of riding. Internally, the project was called Project Phoenix. And like the mythical bird, the R9 rose from the ashes, reviving not just Yamaha's spirit, but the soul of motorcycling itself. Even years from now, when electric silence rules the streets, those who've ridden an R9 will remember. The sound will linger, not in their ears, but in their hearts. Because some things aren't meant to be replaced. The R9 stands as a reminder: bravery still matters, passion still matters, and the freedom to feel alive, truly alive, is worth preserving. When you ride an R9, you're not chasing speed. You're chasing a moment, that fleeting second when everything else fades, and only the road, the wind, and your heartbeat remain. You can't explain why you love something dangerous, the narrator whispers. You just know that when you open the throttle, the world feels right. And maybe that's what freedom really means. The camera fades out. The R9 stands alone beneath the moonlight, its blue paint glowing faintly, the tuning fork logo catching the silver of the night, and no applause. No fireworks, just silence, the kind that comes after something unforgettable. Because behind every great machine, there's something beyond logic. Something we simply call feeling. The Yamaha R9 isn't just about speed, it's about the courage to feel alive. And as long as there's one rider out there willing to twist the throttle in the dark, the name Yamaha R9 will live on, as a legend born of freedom, passion, and the beautiful madness of the open road. Time moves forward, unrelenting and unstoppable. Machines rise, evolve, and vanish, swallowed by the tide of innovation. But every now and then, one machine refuses to fade. The Yamaha R9 became one of those rare legends, a motorcycle that transcended the boundaries of performance and technology to touch something deeper, the human soul. When it first appeared, few believed it would become anything more than a transitional model, a bridge between the past glory of the R6 and the futuristic silence of electric sport bikes. Yet, what no one could predict was how the R9 would ignite something forgotten: passion. It reminded people that riding was not about reaching a destination, but about feeling alive while getting there. Months after its debut, Yamaha dealers around the world noticed something strange. Riders were no longer asking for horsepower figures or top speed numbers. Instead, they asked, "What does it feel like?" They didn't want data, they wanted emotion. And when they rode the R9 for the first time, they understood. It wasn't the smoothest or the quietest bike, but it was alive. The throttle pulsed like a heartbeat, the power delivery surged with rhythm, and the sound of its triple-cylinder engine carried the raw growl of rebellion. The R9 didn't chase perfection. It embraced the imperfections that made every ride unique in a world ruled by electronics and algorithms. Where traction control and stability systems tried to outthink the rider, the R9 felt different. It came equipped with technology, yes, advanced IMUs, quick shifters, multiple ride modes, but beneath it all, it had a human pulse. Riders said it didn't feel like a machine helping them. It felt like a living companion dancing with them. Each twist of the throttle wasn't an order but a conversation. It didn't beg to be controlled, it invited you to understand it. And that invitation was irresistible. The R9 soon found its way into the hearts of thousands of riders, from Tokyo to London, from Jakarta to Los Angeles. Across continents, groups began forming in secret, calling their gatherings the Night of the Ninth. On those nights, hundreds of R9s would line up under the stars, their engines rumbling in harmony, not for racing or competition, but to celebrate a shared pulse. Videos of those gatherings flooded the internet, a sea of headlights slicing through fog with the caption, "We ride not to escape life, but to let life catch up." It became a motto for an entire generation of riders who felt trapped between technology and tradition. Yamaha noticed, and instead of trying to control it, they embraced it. They launched a global campaign called Project Pulse, documenting stories of real riders who shared their lives with the R9. There was a father and son from Italy who rebuilt their R9 after a crash, a young woman from Japan who found confidence again after her accident, and a veteran from the Philippines who said the R9 gave him his youth back. Every story carried the same heartbeat: courage, emotion, and freedom. The film closed with a simple line that would become iconic. Some machines are built to move, others are built to move you. But as with every legend, controversy followed. The R9's wild, untamed character drew criticism from governments and safety boards. Some called it too powerful for the streets, claiming it encouraged reckless riding. A few countries even proposed restricting its sale to experienced riders only. The headlines were brutal: a beautiful danger, too wild for the modern world. Yet, for every critic, there were 10 defenders. Riders stood up online and in person, writing open letters and forum posts. One veteran rider wrote, "The R9 doesn't kill people. It just reminds them that riding isn't a video game." And he was right. The R9 didn't tolerate arrogance. It demanded respect, taught humility. It made riders pay attention again, not to the gadgets, but to themselves. Years passed and the world changed. By 2030, electric motorcycles ruled the streets. Efficient, silent, and almost soulless, the world moved toward quiet perfection. But somewhere, in the corners of old garages, the Yamaha R9 still lived. Owners treated them like holy relics. They polished every surface, tuned every valve, and refused to let go. Offers came, prices soared, but they always said the same thing: you can't sell a heartbeat. And on certain nights, in forgotten industrial streets or mountain passes, the sound of that triple-cylinder roar could still be heard, a ghostly echo of freedom that refused to die. People who heard it would smile and whisper, "Someone's still keeping the fire alive." In 2035, an independent filmmaker released a small movie titled The Last R9. It told the story of an aging rider who rediscovers his old Yamaha R9 in a dusty garage and decides to take one final ride across Europe before combustion engines become illegal. The film was quiet, melancholic, and deeply human. In the final scene, the man parks the R9 on a cliff overlooking the sea, removes his helmet, and listens to the ticking sound of the engine cooling. He smiles and whispers, "Thank you," before the screen fades to black. No speed, no action, just peace. The film became a cult classic, loved not for its drama, but for its truth. Yamaha later reposted the trailer with the caption, "You never forget your first love." It was a love letter to the R9 generation. Those who grew up with oil-stained hands, wind-burned faces, and hearts that beat to the rhythm of a cross-plane triple. Even after production ended, the R9's spirit refused to vanish. Its DNA quietly flowed into Yamaha's future projects: electric, hybrid, experimental. The engineers who built the R9, once a small rebel team within the company, became legends in their own right. When asked about their creation, one of them said, "The R9 taught us to design for emotion, not algorithms." And that philosophy became Yamaha's silent rebellion in a sterile future. Even as their new bikes hummed silently on the streets, riders could still feel the ghost of the R9. A flicker of wildness hidden in the smoothness, a whisper of danger behind the silence. BY 2040, the R9 was no longer just a motorcycle. It was art. Museums began displaying it as part of exhibitions called The Age of Emotion in Motion. Visitors would stare at its compact frame, its muscular tank, its sculpted tail, and read the inscription on the plaque. When the world went quiet, the R9 reminded us what noise felt like. It was a beautiful irony, the loudest machine becoming the symbol of emotional depth. Even decades later, motorcycle clubs around the world still gathered once a year to celebrate it. The tunnels would shake again with the roar of the few surviving R9s, and people would stop to listen, not out of annoyance, but out of reverence. That sound wasn't just mechanical, it was human. There's a story whispered among Yamaha enthusiasts, perhaps legend, perhaps truth. They say that one night, long after production had ceased, a group of retired Yamaha engineers met secretly at the company's old test track in Iwata. They brought with them the last prototype R9, the one signed by every member of the original Project Phoenix team. No media, no fanfare, just the sound of wind sweeping across the empty circuit. One by one, each engineer rode the R9 for the last time, not to test its limits, but to feel its soul. When the final rider returned, he parked it gently at the center of the track, turned off the ignition, and said, "We built this to remind the world what passion sounds like." Then they walked away, leaving the bike under the open sky. Some say that if you visit that track on a quiet night, you can still hear the faint hum of that engine echoing through the air, like a heartbeat refusing to stop. So what does the Yamaha R9 truly represent? It's not just a machine, it's a statement, a defiance against the quiet perfection of modern life. It stands for the idea that true freedom isn't found in safety or control, but in the courage to take risks. It celebrates imperfection, chaos, and the unfiltered joy of mastering something dangerous. Every vibration, every growl, every gear shift is a reminder that you are not a passenger in life, but a participant. Freedom, the R9 teaches, is not about escaping rules. It's about embracing the risk of breaking them responsibly. Because without risk, there's no thrill. Without sound, there's no emotion. And without struggle, there's no meaning. Even after the factories stop and the world moves on, the Yamaha R9 will remain, not in showrooms, but in memories. It will live in the stories told around campfires, in the photos framed on garage walls, and in the dreams of riders who never got to own one, but still imagine what it must have felt like. Somewhere, right now, someone is rolling an R9 out of their garage at dawn. The sky is pale and silent. They turn the key, twist the throttle, and the world awakens with a roar. For the next few hours, nothing else exists. Not work, not deadlines, not fear. Just the sound, the wind, and the pulse of life flowing through steel and flesh. That is the essence of the Yamaha R9. Not just speed, not just design, but emotion. It's the echo of freedom in a world that has forgotten how to feel. It's the madness that reminds us we're still human. And as long as there is one rider left who dares to open the throttle and chase the horizon, the legend of the R9 will never truly die. Because legends don't need to exist forever. They just need to be remembered. And the Yamaha R9 will be remembered as the last great roar before the silence, the heartbeat of a generation that refused to fade quietly into the future.